Hello. So this is going to be a re-recording of, oh great, Java wants to update. This is going to be a re-recording of the last lesson I did, which unfortunately I forgot to um, stream audio, which is pretty terrible, but looks like it should be okay this time. It would really bother me if we had one video without the audio, so I'm just going to do this over again so that we have it. It's game 20 from Invincible, and it's Shusaku against Shuwa. Um, Shusaku was actually up like 7-1 against Shuwa by this point. So normally he would be on a different handicap by now, and he'd be playing some games as white, not only as black. But he was really humble and refused to play white against his teacher. So he just keeps taking black. And this is a pretty good fighting game. So let's get into it. Have our standard sort of, oh great, I already broke it. That's fantastic. Good thing about this is offline I can just cut that. Okay, so we have our standard sort of opening. You'll notice that I'm doing this offline. Originally we did it live and there was lots of interaction and stuff, but I don't think I'm going to do that again because that would be kind of strange doing the same game twice. So normally here we would see A, but Shuwa actually plays at B. If he does this one, we'll probably see Shusaku's Kosumi, and we can, get into a normal sort of game we've seen time after time. In this case, Shuwa approaches the lower left corner, which is a little bit different. So just in terms of the basics in the opening, there's sort of like two choices right now, and that's to approach or enclose one of the last unfinished corners. Shusaku picks this one because it works nicely potentially with A, and especially it prepares a pincer on the bottom. So this is a really nice move. Shuwa double approaches this stone. This is the most severe pincer, being one space away. He could also just extend on the bottom to take away the influence of black Shimari here. Or he could possibly go here, right, to leave a two-space extension to 03. We've seen this type of thing as well. But he plays here instead. So for black, we have to get the A stone out. That's our main concern, is getting out and splitting white, because there's two white stones here. We don't want them to connect too easily. And there's different ways of coming out. We can come out like with the Kosumi. We could come out by attaching to the stone on top, or we could come out by attaching to the bottom stone. In this case, Shusaku chooses to attach to this stone. Notice that we don't generally like to touch weak stones because it will help them become stronger, and that means they're harder to attack. But in this case, black is all by himself. He doesn't really have any friends nearby on the bottom area, like around here. He doesn't really have friends on the left side either. So in any comparative sense, black is weak here, which means that the two white stones are actually pretty strong. So it's okay to touch a strong stone because we really need the help. Let's look at some other possibilities. This one would be possible as well. White will Hane, black needs to extend. Now there's this tiger's mouth vital point that white can't let black have. This move also protects the cut for now, which is nice, so that's a really important spot. And it threatens to cut through, so black will defend. And from here, there's two choices for white. The usual one is to take the 3-3, but there's another choice at B. So if we take the 3-3, that's really big. black will need to get a base like this, and then white can extend somehow on the bottom. The one good thing about this is that J3 really, it's starting to limit this Shamari. Black can actually still extend though, so that's not too big of a deal. The other thing is that A is kind of prepared to approach B now, so B may have lost some of its development potential. I think in this game, white would actually play this move. This is what Miyamoto Naoki 9-dan suggested as well. So this is the move when you really want to grow the B area, but that lets black get the 3-3, which means almost alive already, but that's okay. Can keep growing and threatening to surround. Black definitely can't let himself be surrounded, so he needs to come out now. And this is the move to do that. We don't want to push from behind because that would just help white, right? So, and also we can't cut. Well, you can cut, but these stones are captured, right? So what black does is he plays here, and that actually threatens to cut, and it also threatens to hane. So white would extend to defend the cut for now, and then black could hane to come out, and then probably fix the cut, something like this. So white can get some development on the left and can also start to settle on the bottom. Notice that if white extends here, which is what we want to do locally, right? Walk ahead. Now this cut works because of the A stone. So we try to do that same sequence, but now the problem is we can't play G2 anymore because black can just do this. Technically, you can actually still connect under, right? Black's going to have to capture, and you can still connect under, but this is pretty pitiful for white. So that's one possibility. Miyamoto thinks that that this press at B, this potential pressing move for white, is going to be important in the opening. And he thinks, let me get the right diagram here. He thinks that maybe black didn't like this one because with the press at A, white can really start building. Personally, I think it would be fine, but I understand that sentiment. Just for fun, there's another really fancy move you can play here to get out, which is this attachment. Looks kind of strange, but actually white needs to play like this anyway. And then black can play here. And white still needs to play like that. So it'll end up being the same thing. This move isn't really going to work, right? It's way too thin. And again, this is way too thin as well. So this is kind of a fancy move you can play sometimes. But maybe he didn't like the influence that white was going to get, which is why he chose this one. Now there's this move as well, and this choice is the best if you really don't want to help either A or B, if you really want to keep them weak. And that would go back to, what I was saying earlier. If you have help around these areas, that means A and B are really potentially weak, so you don't want to make them strong. So you would just come out without really touching either stone. But in this case, black doesn't have help nearby, right? So touching is fine. White, of course, has to hane. That's the basic shape here. And now two possible moves for black here, right? Either walk ahead, which is what Shusaku plays. Again, Miyamoto thinks that this is because of this press and that the center could possibly be important. Could also pull back, which in my mind is more basic in the sense of this is more often played. And there's two problems for white now. There's a cut at A. If black cuts there, it's just going to work. And then there's the B stone, which is kind of weak. So white essentially has two options. You can fix the cut, with a nice tiger's mouth. And then black can play some sort of pincer attacking move. Oh, thanks for letting me know the audio is good. I just looking at the stream chat. Yeah, so black could play a pincer here, and Miyamoto thinks in this case, since the center is important, white could actually jump here. It might look a little strange not to help A, but still thinking about this B press. And black's probably going to want to play here, right? To link everything up and really try to subdue this A stone. But now there's a really good move for white, probably going to be played later, not immediately. And that's this move. We don't try to save A directly because it's like 5 against 1 now, right? Or like 4 against 1. So it's too hard to save, but we can threaten to either connect with B or C. So black's going to have to let us connect. We can get one more Hane and connect in Sente, threatening to cut at A. And then we can connect back up. So this A stone is dead, but it was extremely well used. I'm really happy about that. Black's area is strong, but it's actually really not big at all. And if we try to do this, this is just going to be too difficult to kill. So that would be one possible way. Now white can also deal with the B stone by extending. Then black will just cut. White will play one Atari. And one question I asked during the original review is, how should white play now? Because I think this is a really good question just in terms of technique, especially for Q players. The answer, just to skip to the answer, is that the best thing to do is just connect. This is Sente. White can play A next to capture 2 stones, right? So if black ignores, we can capture. So that means black has to capture this stone. So we've connected in Sente, and now we can play something else. Not exactly sure where we're going to play, but we have Sente. Now the Q mistake is to play here. Oh, that's a forcing move. Let's do it. But then the problem we have is there's a cut now, and we have to connect. And now we're Gote. And beyond that, these 4 stones are actually pretty heavy. Black can think about attacking those either immediately or later because they don't actually have a base. This is equivalent to connecting. Black plays here, and then suddenly white plays here. It's a little more obvious that it's a mistake in this case. Now there were some other moves that were suggested actually, which I didn't expect. During the lecture, I just thought people were going to say A or B. But like some people suggested this, which is actually also not good. We can look at why. Black can get a free Atari, and then he has to come back. So the only difference between this and our normal variation is that we've exchanged A for B, which is kind of like a ridiculous exchange. So we've got, white connects, black plays here, which is really strange given the current circumstances. White could actually just capture this now, but for some reason, white plays here, which is really pretty bad. So that's not so good. This is not actually a tiger's mouth. This is a tiger's mouth that will be an empty triangle, like one move later. So that's pretty bad. In any case, white will play like this, and he can get some center influence again. So Miyamoto thought that if black pulls back, in all of the variations, white can get some nice central influence that might work well with the press at C, which to my taste is pretty strategic, but sure, that's fine. So perhaps that's why he decided to come out into the center instead. And white actually kept pressing, which again, he might be thinking about this A move. It's actually more usual to play like this, right? But he presses. Black needs to play the vital point. which is here. Make this nice little table shape. It's tempting to walk ahead, and locally, at least if you don't consider these two stones, it's correct, A, walk ahead of B. But the problem is now white will get this one, and he can just extend. And A is actually a slow move now. It should be at B. And the reason for that, this is maybe a little complicated, but black can exchange C for D in Sente, which means black actually has a strong bamboo joint here because he can get E4 for free at any time. If he's got a bamboo joint, that means we can actually move A to B because we can make this exchange anytime. White could also push one more and then do this. And you can see that black is kind of just floating. It's a little strange. So the vital point's actually here. And now we see another case of a tiger's mouth vital point. White's got to stop black from getting that. That would be way too easy. And now there's two choices for black. Either connect at A or cut at B. B is more severe. Miyamoto actually said that A is just... It sounded like he just thought this wasn't a good move. But there's been other reviews where we saw this shape and this was shown as an option. And it wasn't necessarily, cast in a negative light. So I'm not sure if that's just, personal opinion that differs between different pros. But Miyamoto thinks this is better. White Atari's, black extends. So let's look at some of the variations here. What would happen? Miyamoto thinks white would extend. And now if black cuts, this will actually turn out pretty bad for black. White can force, and extend. Now you may say, black captured a stone, but the problem is black is extremely over-concentrated, right? White got to play on both sides, the bottom and on the left. And he's also pretty well enclosed, right? Even though he's alive, he's sort of enclosed, which is not really good. There's some other variations from some of the earlier commentaries we saw, which may be like this. Again, this is going to be bad. But black can consider playing Hane here. This is a better move than the cut. And now white has to fix that cut. He can probably do it like this, right? The cut is just a ladder now. And black has a cut now. And it's not that easy to deal with. We actually want to play here. This is the vital point in this shape, right? To help our single stone. But there's a cut there. So that means we need to deal with the cut first. And the way to do that is to press over here first. So black can press, and then play there. So these are preparation moves. This is a little advanced, but I think this is a really useful idea. Now if white cuts, we can just Atari and push, right? And this is extremely heavy for white. You can see that we've prepared already with these two square stones. So that's one possibility. White actually might Hane back. Shuwa played this move in another game we haven't seen yet. If white Hane's back, black can cut now. And it may become like this. I still like white here, but still some interesting variations there. And perhaps he doesn't like any of those, so he just cuts directly. White gets his forcing move. Now he doesn't take his other forcing move immediately. he extends, right? Protect the head of 2 stones. If we can force here first, but the problem is it uses up all the Aji, or most of the Aji at least, on the A stone. And he doesn't want to do that just yet. We'll see why in a second. So he just extends. Now, black's going to take that spot since white didn't. Otherwise, white can get it for free. Now, white Hane's here. He's starting to connect up on the outside, and you can see he's using this A Aji. So this is interesting. That's why he preserved that Aji, because he wanted this Hane at f4 to be more powerful. Black actually has to push out here now. It's the only choice. Where we really want to play is this Atari, because this is a vital point for both sides, right? But if we Atari, we're going to have problems now. White can just connect, and next he can capture our 2 stones by playing A, right? A, B, C. So that's not good. We would have to connect. And this is a forcing move too, and we would have to extend. That's really painful. White's getting a really strong, nice position out here. Now, if we don't respond to this, white can just Atari and squeeze. So that's no good. I believe you can do the same thing here too if we try to Hane. Just Atari and squeeze. So you can see the shape is actually really weak for black, and that's all because of this A Aji stone. So that's why he comes out. There's actually another move Miyamoto showed. White could try this one as well. Black will capture that stone, but we can get forcing move, forcing move, forcing move, and then connect. And this is similar. Black shape is really ugly dumpling shape, and white gets a nice big wall on the outside. So black's got to push through to try and separate. And white says, okay, I'm going to take that vital point then. Black plays Hane at the head of 3, very powerful. And then makes a tiger's mouth. Now at this point, there's a Miai that black has. We can attack the group on bottom next, or we can play a vital point at B, which is the center of 3 stones to Suji, right? White chooses to help his group on bottom first, which I think is correct, but that lets black play this vital point. Let's see. If white plays here, that would help against this vital point. This is the active way to deal with this vital point. Black could play some attacking move on bottom, and you can see that this works really well with the Shamari in the lower right. So Shuwa probably didn't want that. So that's why he extended. Very valuable. Miyamoto pointed out that black could play here if he wants. This just, the young Shusaku, this wasn't really his style, right? He was more severe. So he plays here. And Shuwa fights back. This is the fighting spirit move. We haven't fixed either of the cuts directly, but we're threatening to capture 3 stones next with D. So it's a strong move. This is the move to fix both cuts, but it's just absolutely terrible shape. These are going to be forcing moves, right? And the shape is just abysmal. So we can't do that. That would be like game over right at the beginning. So he turns. And Shusaku decides that the center is more important than these 3 stones. And that's correct. If we just save our 3 stones, white can defend. Black can still cut in Sente, because that threatens a snapback. But this fight isn't so easy for black. It's actually going to have to struggle here a bit. So he does the outside first, which is actually Sente, because we can cut at A next. And pushes from behind a bit, but that's because we really needed the help. These stones are strong now, and A is still going to be weak for later. And then he plays this nice pressing move, looking to attack these stones. He still didn't save his 3 stones because that would be too easy on white. White could just come out. So he presses first. And now white could just play A now and capture the 3 stones, but he doesn't. He needs to come out first, and that's the correct decision. If we capture, let's see what's going to happen. Black can force, and then can jump down. And we actually need another move to live. And this is just really terrible, right? We got surrounded in Sente, and black is really strong. So we have to come out first. There is Aji in this connection though, so black's going to poke at that and cut for Aji. Aji being at A or B. Shusaku plays A, and he wants to see if white's going to connect at A or if he's going to capture at B. Shuwa captures at B. If he connects at A, black can keep pushing. Force, force. Yeah, we gave white something at A, but it's okay. We can save our 3 stones, actually in Sente. White has to connect up now, and black can play Keima here. And you can see that even though we've given white the top left, if you look in the center of the board where all the action is, black is completely dominating the rest of the board, right? White's got his A area, he's got a B stone, and he's got something at C, but all of the big development potential is for black and all the fighting is for black, so that's not so good. And if white turns here to get a leg up in the center, now we have this Atari, and we can descend, and these stones are all dead because A and B are Miai. So one common mistake you have to be careful about is to not do this, because that allows Ko, right? So this is why he just captured first. Of course, that lets black Atari, which is pretty painful. White has to Atari back. This is the fighting move. If you connect, you're going to be really, really sad here, right? Pushing from behind on the second line. That's no good. So neither side is letting up here. Black gets to capture. White needs co-threat, and he's got one here. And he gets to recapture. Black doesn't want to allow the double Panuki, so he connects. And now white decides to capture these 3 stones. Now he could finish the Ko, and that's a solid move, but it's a little slack because it doesn't put much pressure on black's big group here. So his idea is, capture the 3 stones. That puts a bunch of pressure on the A group, which in turn makes my B stones stronger, right? Because if the A group is really weak, it's harder for them to attack my B stone. So this is the fighting way. Black gets his forcing moves in and gets to retake the Ko. White has another forcing move. And now instead of retaking the Ko, he plays here. And this is an extremely nice move, right? We're helping the 4 stones, and we're starting to connect up to A. So that's really important. The other thing is that the B stones are getting surrounded, and they don't really have eyes yet. So black actually has to start to live here. So A is a very important point, so important that Miyamoto thinks that perhaps taking the Ko isn't so good right now. It's definitely playable, but maybe this is better. Let's just get out first, put pressure on these 4 stones. Maybe that's the way to go. But instead, black has to respond, we do one forcing move here. Black has to connect. And he gets to take the ko back again. And now the thing is, these stones actually aren't alive yet. White can put these into a ko. He doesn't have time yet, but that's something he can do. So black really needs to live, but he doesn't want to live passively because there's a potential for a weak group here. So he plays an active move. He's trying to cut through. And let's see how that works out. It goes like this. Black is indeed surrounded, but we cut a group off, right? Potential weak group here. Now this move would live, but it would be pretty passive. It doesn't do anything about white's thinness out here, and white might have a chance to connect that up. Also, if white tries to connect here, black can Hane. This might look a little scary, but black can make one Atari exchange to make these two stones heavier. And then we can extend here. And now, if black gets to play A next, the two stones are dead. But black can also play B. So black has Miai here. That's why white can't play that way. So played like this. And this group really needs shape. So white makes the turn here. This is extraordinarily important. If he doesn't, this group is just going to be struggling forever. So this turn is really important. Black again takes the ko. Ko threat. Answer. And again, he ignores the ko. He jumps here, which is a really strong move as well. He's taken this weak group, and now this group is actually quite strong. We can't attack this anymore. But he's also committing to winning the ko, because now black can play here. And at this point, white is really committed to winning this ko, because if black wins it, there's so many weaknesses, and white would have to come back and live at B, which is way too painful. So with this move here, this A move, white is basically declaring that he's going to ignore any ko threat that black plays. So he captures, and black plays a really nice ko threat, right? Actually, let me show. Oops, let's get rid of that. This corner is actually ko. So black is really happy to get a ko threat here that can threaten to capture two stones and link his group up, so he doesn't have to worry about his B group becoming a ko. And since the ko is so heavy now, white connects and black gets to cut. So white got to fix up the A area, but black got to connect up the B group. And the fighting that started from here actually still isn't over yet, because this group's pretty weak now, right? Because white took the time with A and B. So now he's turning to attack this group, and black sees a way he can capture some stones here. It's a little painful, but he does it anyway. We're making inside for outside exchanges. That is, black is getting stones on the inside while white is getting stones on the outside. Generally, this is much better for white than it is for black, because the two square stones face a big area, right? They affect a large portion of the board, where the triangle stones don't really do much at all. They're facing this narrow area. Actually, this is another example back here. This A for B exchange, white's very happy about that. You know, he gets a move that's facing the open area, and black gets kind of an inside move. But black needs to settle as quickly as possible, and that's why he went this way. So white sacrifices, and there's a bunch of weaknesses over here. So white wedges in. That might look a little strange and possibly even slow, but it's not, because if black wedges here, we just have to look at how many weaknesses are. There's way too many. And the good news for white is that this is actually sente. Black comes back and defends here. Now, this looks like a more powerful move. This is the move you want to play, and this was suggested during the original lecture, but this is too greedy in this case. White can push and cut, and now this is a snapback, right? So that's not good. Now you might say, well, what if I just play here first? That's true, white can't connect anymore. You'll capture 4 stones, but white can just pull out, and now you capture, but it's false eye, and this entire group doesn't have any eyes, so that's way too heavy. This is probably going to die. So this is the best move. Black really needs to make sure he has the eyes here. And finally, white gets this nice pressing move, and hopefully it will work with these stones. Notice that he doesn't just fix this right away, because that might be too slow. He's hoping that he can handle that cut. So let's see. Actually, let me go back to something that was mentioned in the lecture. It's actually a lot of good stuff that comes up when it's live, and I'm trying to remember most of it so that it doesn't get lost, but I'm probably not going to be able to remember all of it. Someone suggested this move and asked if it was good. Locally, of course, this is joseki. You know, we can press black low somehow. But the problem is this is also contacting a weak stone, forcing it to become stronger, which means we lose all our other options. There's like lots of options here, right? We can pincer with C, D, E, F. And instead we're doing this. And the thing about it is that the bottom isn't even white's area to develop. So I think the way I put it during the original lesson was that on the bottom, black has 3 stones, in particular these 2. White has 1. For some reason, white thinks that he can develop the bottom. This is really not a good plan. This would be a good plan if, you know, these 2 if these 2 stones were white, then that might be a good plan, right? And we like finish up here, make a nice big moyo. But it doesn't make sense in this context, so that's not good. The reason I remembered that is compare it to this situation. Now white has a clear reason why he's doing this, right? He's got so much potential on the top that this is just a clear decision at this point. Now, had the game gone differently, maybe this would have been the best move, or maybe, you know, Taisha or pincer, pincer, lots of different choices. But at this point, he's confident that he can make the most out of this move. So black has to push from behind just enough until he can jump ahead. White continues to grow. And the top is getting pretty intimidating, but Shusaku keeps his cool. He plays the local move here. This is the correct shape locally. The reason for that is if you jump in right now, white has this move, which will flatten the right side instantly pretty much. That's pretty painful. And the thing is, this is black's main area of potential, right? So he doesn't want to lose all the potential so easily. So he keeps going. And now what's really interesting is white keeps going too. this one surprised me. Might expect this now. And this all comes down to counting and judgment. Miyamoto thinks that now black can play here. And empty triangle here. It's a little ugly, but it's really important that we take the liberty because there's cutting, right? Like around A and B. And so here, this is a judgment thing. Probably not possible to live in the C area anymore. On the other hand, black has some stones that he can use to jump in that side. And also there's a cut at A and there's other cuts like at E and F, right? So white's area does look scary, but maybe it's a little too open. So maybe white wouldn't be too confident about playing like that. So he keeps pressing. And now black doesn't have a choice anymore. He has to come in. Because if he keeps answering, white's going to force all of his stuff low, right? And then get his move. That's not fair. So black comes in. White is going to attack. And there's some pressure on this stone now. So white goes for this standard settling move. And A looks natural, but it's actually not good. Black tries to fight back with this move. The problem with this move is essentially white can play like this. And there's actually some Ko stuff going on here, right? Actually, let's see, perhaps push first. So white shape is actually pretty strong here, and the Ko is kind of like a Hanami Ko for white, flower viewing Ko. If black doesn't do anything, there's Aji with the cuts, right? Or here. It's pretty dangerous. Black doesn't want to have to deal with that. So he tries to fight back like this, pushing through. But black has weaknesses too. White pushes and then answers. Now this looks a little scary because it looks like black can just capture us at A, but he actually can't. He has to come back here. White gets to Atari and gets to capture. Now the reason for that is black can capture this stone, but the liberties are too short on these 4 stones. So now we have this move, right? Atari, Atari, and this is a pretty big disaster for black, in my opinion. Completely crushed on the right-hand side. So he plays like this, and white gets the corner. Black gets some useful forcing moves on the outside. His A group is a little stronger now. There's one alternative here that white could play. Actually, probably not now, though. He'll just do it here. We can connect using a hanging connection because it puts more pressure on black's 2 stones than the solid connection. And now black will have to connect. And now white can try to attack these 2 stones. So this would have been possible, but I guess he wasn't confident to completely kill these. And Miyamoto said it's a little much to ask for to kill these because there's cut at A, B, C. There's actually a lot of Aji. So he just took, profit first, pretty practical approach. And now we've really got to deal with this cut. It's really weak, so we pick a solid move. Not something like this, right? I was reviewing a game earlier today, and someone played a move like this, but these stones here are way too weak to be playing a fast move like A. So we've played A and we still haven't dealt with the issue. So it's really important we play a tight move. And black, of course, has to get this group out now. So we're going to jump ahead. Not going to push from behind because that would be slow. And white wants to keep taking care of this group. So he makes a forcing move here. And black answers very nicely. He plays another forcing move. So he doesn't want to play like this. This is normal locally, but the problem is no pressure on white. So white could just do whatever he wants now. Like come in here. Now when we play here, white still can't cut us directly, like with A or B. And we're really strongly encouraged to answer on the A stone, right? Normally we need to extend up to B. So this is a strong move. The problem is if we extend now, then black will take sente, right? And white's idea here is to make a forcing move in sente and then go to the right side. But black's trying to get sente. White has to ignore anyway. But now you can see the benefit is that black can get a nice follow-up move later, possibly. So J17 is a really good move in a fighting situation. For now, black has to get out. White slides to try and live. The best black can do is stop him here. And then there's this really nice Tsuji here for starting to get some living shape. This was a really interesting point too because almost no one got this question right. How should black play here? Everyone said A or B, which is both mistakes. I think eventually someone said C, but that was after I said that A and B were incorrect. So black just connects. Why is that? White has to come back anyways, right? Or black can Hane and capture that one stone. And now black has sente. So first, this one just doesn't work. Peep in sente and then cut. And the one stone is dead. So that one's pretty easy. Now with this one, white will pull back. And now there's a cut left over. So we have to connect. We've lost sente, right? So the Tawari in this case is, we connect, white pulls back, and in the real game, black comes out here, which is good. But for some reason, this is the move, right? If we do the Tawari, we don't have to play here. There's other choices, other things we can do. So that's why A is actually not good. It may look natural, but that's just a bad habit. Actually, connection is better. Okay, so black's coming out, putting some pressure on these guys. Now he could try to attack the group on the right, but he didn't see exactly how to do that directly. So white finishes up here. This is a nice, solid move, making sure his group over there is okay. Of course, we have to be careful about these. Black follows up. That white group is really starting to get a lot weaker. Notice that these two stones are really not important at the moment. So we're not going to try and save those. That would be really, really heavy. White continues trying to help the main group. This would be a big Q mistake, right? We're trying to save these stones that aren't really important, and that would just leave our group heavy. So he tries to get a forcing move here. This is sente, so black has to connect. Otherwise, white could jump here, and it's disconnected, right? Just disconnected now. So that's why black had to connect. And white finally gets this move. This is a little daring though, because these guys aren't quite connected yet. And black goes straight for the vital point. It's the dog's face vital point, right? I might actually play here. Of course, that's going to leave black. Great stuff over here. But when I was first reviewing this game, this is the spot that was popping out in my mind because it makes a nice shape. Okay, so Shuwa played like this. White gets, or black gets the vital point. And this is aiming at cutting at A, but you also have to remember there's a cut at B. And that's a lot of stones at stake there. So this is actually really tricky for white, but he decides the best defense is probably a good offense. So he goes after the elephant's eye shape in black, counterattacks. Black starts cutting through. It's a little too heavy to cut directly, so he plays the stone here. Again, we've got several cuts. Problem is if he cuts here directly, white will just give the 2 stones up and save the main stones. And the 2 stones aren't that big since the A group was already alive. So this would be a little too easy for white. So he's trying to attack the whole thing. White plays here, which is a really nice sabaki move. Connecting would be heavy, right? Empty triangle, heavy play. So, white plays here, black plays there. So maybe white should play here. And black still can't cut, right? So he actually comes like this. Because if we cut, white will just play here. And if we connect, now white can connect, and he got a nice exchange first, right? The triangle stone really helps. So L14 is a nice sabaki move. So Shusaku gets some forcing moves here. It's a little ugly, the shape. It's an empty triangle, but he's going to cut. And now he's cut white's group off. So this is pretty tough. But there's actually enough Aji here that Shuwa is actually able to use. He pushes. This, of course, all comes down to reading. And indeed it works. Black pushes through from this side. This looks natural, right? Let's just surround the whole thing. The problem with that is white can pull these stones out now. And as weak as white is here, black is in trouble. He has to protect against A, but then white can cut. And despite the weaknesses on all these stones, nothing quite works for black. So he can push, push, push. And at this point, it looks like A, B, Miai. But once we take a liberty, we can't do A because it's self-Atari. And we can't do B because it's too slow, right? Atari, and now black's in Atari. So black can't block. He has to push here. White backs off because he wants to be able to cut at A. That's really important to keep that threat going. If we play here, now black can just block, right? Because there's no A move. Now we're in trouble. Also, by the way, if white just tries to come out in the beginning, like this, it's not going to work. It's a little different. Because now when we push here, black's not obligated to answer at A. He can actually just push. And now we've got an extra liberty compared to last time. So in this case, we actually do have Miai. So it's complicated reading stuff. But here we are. Black pushes. So this is the result we get. White lost some stones, but actually he was able to pick up some stones. Not too bad. Really good result considering how weak that group was. Now we're pretty much into endgame stuff. Black makes a forcing move here. White keeps his stone strong. Endgame down here. This is actually Sente. Otherwise, there's some squeezing moves going on here, right? So that's Sente. Black starts aiming at some A Aji here. It doesn't work right now, but you can see that maybe in the future this whole thing could get cut off. So what white does is he plays here. This threatens to capture the marked stones by playing A next. So black defends, but by defending he helped white capture the 2 stones, which got rid of a lot of the Aji. So nice inducing play there from white. And now black continues growing the center area. This may look more natural, but Miyamoto showed that this actually wouldn't be so good. White could force, could play the Hane and connection in Sente, and then could just clamp here. So black really hasn't gotten all that much. So he plays like this instead. Now that of course lets white into the corner, which is a little painful. But we can push and then clamp. Try to minimize the damage. Gets in one forcing move here. And when black connects, this whole white thing actually isn't alive yet. So he has to push one more time to get some additional eye space. If he doesn't, we can actually just peep and turn. And I think you'll find there's actually no way to make this shape live. So he's got to get the extra eye space. Black removes that clamp on the bottom. That's really big. There was a really good question here in the lecture, which I'll cover again. Someone asked, why did he play M2 instead of this one? Doesn't this get more points? Problem here is that you have to think about this Hane in endgame, right? And the question is, does black have to connect now? Yes or no? And the answer is yes, he does. Because if he doesn't, white can Atari. And at this point, some players will be thinking, oh, well, that doesn't work, right? Just runs into black stones. But the problem is white doesn't have to push from behind for forever, right? He can play a net here, and 3 stones are captured. So that's bad. So that means black would eventually have to play M2 anyway. So you might as well just, we can get rid of those auxiliary stones and play A in the first place. And now anything white does here later is going to be Gote, so that's fine. So just play here first. It's fine. Now if it were a little different and there was like a black stone here too, I added a stone at A. Now you should play here because that gets you more points. You no longer have to defend because you do just run into black stones and there's no net or anything. So that would be perfectly fine. Okay, so let's see. Next move is here. Clearly a large move. This one's actually again threatening peep. So white makes his eye space as big as possible. Black blocks. White starts poking at some of the Aji here. It's Atari, Atari. Shusaku captures. The thing is, if you Atari here, white can just come out. There's actually no way to capture these two stones because there's an Atari at A. So just to show it real clearly, if we try to surround, that's Atari, and now white can just connect. Can't stop it, right? So can't really do that. So he just captures to begin with. And white plays from the outside, which is good style. Threatening to save the A stone rather than trying to play really heavy here. Excuse me. Also notice there's no Atari. There's no Atari left over anymore either, so black could probably just capture in this case. Okay, so he plays from the outside, and black Atari's here, which is a little interesting. Instead of playing here, this may look like the more natural move. It's actually smaller, though. Miyamoto actually pointed out at this point that both players, their endgame is above criticism, is what he said. Both playing really well. This move is actually bigger than A for a couple of reasons. One, you can get a capture at B later possibly, which may lead to a further capture at C, and then a capture at D, so there's a lot of follow-up. It also allows for like a Sente move at E later, and it stops white from getting some points. So like if you play here, white can do this, right? And add a bunch of points. It's actually pretty big at this stage of the game. So this move is very nice. White starts pushing through, and black takes Sente. Threatening to jump in, can't let that happen. Sente here. And now he takes Gote, a big Gote, to capture these two stones. And now white plays here. This is the only move that Miyamoto questioned, but he wasn't sure about it. He just said maybe this one would be better to really make sure this A stone is dead. In this case, what white is trying to do is he's threatening to connect at A next, right? Which would kill 4 stones, so we can't allow that to happen. So in effect, he's saving the B stone in Sente, but black's not that unhappy to capture, right? And the problem is we can still save the B stone later, which actually happens. And that's kind of problematic. So maybe this one's better. All sorts of counting would have to go into that to figure it out, though. Okay, so he does that in Sente, then he pokes. Black fixes up his cut in Sente. That's pretty nice. And then he says, okay, I'm going to save this stone. There's actually no way to stop black from saving those stones. That's pretty big. So Miyamoto actually thinks maybe that is like the turning point in the end game where maybe white would have had a chance if this didn't happen, but it's really hard to say. Forcing move here, black has to answer that. If we don't, we just get into the same problem we talked about earlier, where we lose all of our eyes. So we've got to answer that. Another forcing move here, which is aiming to cut at A, so black has to connect. Another forcing move. And now we try to secure this area. Hane and connect our Sente. Notice white connects with A, not with B. That's a 1-point difference. Can't afford to make a mistake like that at this level. Let's see, what's next? This capture. So indeed, black is getting all the captures I was talking about earlier, which are not small. Okay, let's see, what was next? White plays here, solid connection. Black pokes and plays Hane connection. It's Gote, but it has a Sente follow-up at A. White forces, black responds. White pushes. Black plays Atari. White answers. Black answers. And now white has Sente to save 1 stone. Black has to save 3. Not a whole lot of big points now, you can tell by the fact that white is playing A and Gote. Let's see, what's next? Sente. 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 And now finally black's going to take Gote here. White uses his Sente. Then he forces here. Black plays Sente, Sente, captures. White makes 1 Hane, captures a stone. Black doesn't want to let him have the point. White plays a move here, which is worth 1 point, right? A is no longer a point. Black gets this move. White connects 1 ko, and then the Kifu says that black takes this ko and connects it, so black has more ko threats. So essentially black gets to connect here, and he wins by 1 point. So it's a really close game, and there were some questions in the end game, right? So I mean, when you lose by 1 point, you really start looking at the end game. Now there was nothing that Miyamoto pointed out like, oh, if he would have played this, you know, he wouldn't have lost by 1 point. The only thing was this one maybe would have made the difference, not certain. But there was another question that someone actually emailed me ahead of time during the week. I guess he studied the game beforehand, and it had to do with this section here. And the question was, what about A versus B? Isn't B bigger than A? And that's a really good question. And I did spend some time trying to study this, and I also tried to address it during the main lecture, but I can't give a 100% answer, but at least I can just show the thought process here of how you would try to count something like this. This one's a little bit complicated. But in the game, white gets 4 points in the corner, and black will just count all of this. So what is that? That's like 7 dead stones, so that's 14 plus, what is that? 4, 5, 6. So that's like 20. But the thing is, it's actually not 20, because if you imagine later on, white's going to fill. Black actually owes a move now, believe it or not, because white can play here. And there's 2 choices for black. You can connect, which is just not going to work, or you can capture, at which point white can play here, and that's going to die. So What that means is eventually, at this point, black's going to have to connect, right? And that's the only one that really matters. This is Atari, but black just captures. There's no points lost there because, white added a dead stone. So at this point, we have to get rid of that. And I said that was 20, right? So in this case, he's actually got 19. Okay, so white has 4 in the corner. Black has 19. White has Sente. That's important, of course. Okay, so now we have to compare that to the other possibility. Okay, so we play here. Immediately, 2 points were lost. That seems clear. But black can capture here in Sente. So that's 1 point gained for black. It was a capture. And white only has 3 points now, so white's lost one, right? So white 3. And now we have to see how many black has. So eventually, in this case, we're actually going to have to add 2 moves eventually. For example, this is going to be Sente because white is threatening A next, so we need to connect. Okay, and then later on, this is still Atari, right? At A, and even if black connects at A, eventually, once we fill all these up, it's going to be Atari. So I'm going to have to fill 2 moves. This is a little in-depth, but essentially I'm going to have to fill 2 moves. So I can't count those. I'll just count these ones. So that's 14, 15, 16 points plus 1 for the capture. So black's got 17 now, and white's got 3. I'm going to ignore the ko for now. Someone's going to win that ko later, right? That's going to be worth something like a point. It's worth like a half because we don't know actually who's going to win. And if you look into it even deeper, it's actually worth like 2/3 for black and 1/3 for white, depending on who the ko is open for. Let's just ignore that. So white lost 1 point. Black lost 2, right? Because last time it was white 4 and black had 19, right? So white, -1, black -2. So the net effect would be, white comes out 1 better in terms of the points, ignoring the ko. But who has Sente? Black has Sente in this case. So that's a lot of stuff that probably was just confusing. And I wouldn't be surprised if I made a mistake because I haven't studied endgame that much. But this is how you would count something like this. And my conclusion was that it may be like a point better, maybe even a point and a half if we count the ko, depending on what happens with that. But black gets Sente. And so it depends on how big Sente is. And to really do this comprehensively, you would have to play out the rest of the endgame in the correct order, right? And that is actually really difficult. So I can't answer the question totally, but hopefully that is at least somewhat interesting for the person who asked that question. And that's going to be the game. Black won by 1 point, so he keeps winning against Shuwa. Next week's game, hopefully I'll remember to record the audio live when we have everyone viewing and asking questions. That's going to be another game against Yasui Sanchi. And I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to do it on Saturday. Probably not. I'm leading towards not because on Saturday morning, at least my time, Saturday morning, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to have our lesson with Yilin Yang, 7 Dan Professional. And so I think I'm just going to have that be the lesson for the day. And I'll probably wait a little bit, skip a week for the Shusaku stuff so we can just focus on Mr. Yang's lecture. In any case, thanks for watching and see you next time.